it would get serious, and I'd be like, I'm ready to throw on my black Nike Airs, and they'd be like, you stay back, and I would be like, these niggas must think I'm soft. Yeah. Seriously, I thought this. I thought this till. Yeah. So I didn't see Daniel for 25 years. The scene's in Honor Up. So we had this conversation. It was so deep that I said, just run the cameras. Let's just talk about this again. And I was like, why you ain't let me do whatever when y'all was doing whatever? He was like, yo, you wasn't meant for that. I knew you had a future. So the real OGs will never hurt nobody. That's going to help everybody, and they can recognize that early. Right. You know. So again, I was a young guy, but I knew guys like these guys. And I didn't look at them as a scary. They were my friends. You know what I mean? And the reason why they were my friends is because they gave me guidance. They taught me how to hustle. They taught me how to survive. Right. You know? So what really stopped me from going to jail was the paid in full. You know, once that thing happened with Rich, I was like, if that happened to Rich, it can happen to anybody. You know? And the crazy thing about it is, why was I there? They thought my man did that? You know what I'm saying? We was all there. Why was I'm like Forrest Gump of everything. Like, why was I there for the legendary hood as well as the legendary music and everything else legendary? Because I'm meant to be legendary. You know, that's how Harlem nigga looks at things. Right. I'm not even surprised. You know. But
there's something different. Damn, you was doing something.
I went to private school.
No. It ain't the private school. It's something that you did differently. James Cagney, you may have channeling James Cagney. Who were you channeling?
At that time, it was different moments, you know? Mm-hmm. So I can say this, like, all right, and again, I hate to keep swinging it, but he's a big part of the DNA. D'Angelo's not my only OG, the oldest OG. He's just my favorite OG. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of, like, if you see how he is, mm-hmm. I'm like that, but not like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a little bit more, but he's out, you know, I'm not him. But I'm you can see where I get a lot of that from. Like, you know, he was always a dude to me that was doing something different than everyone else was doing. He was low. He was super fly. He was a funny guy, but he was a man tough. So I was kind of channeling Daniel. You know, and what I liked about what he did was he was doing something different. Like when Lou was kind of getting, you know, a little bit over, you know, it was like getting crazy for a minute. Yeah. You know, me and Daniel was like, yo, because he was like, oh, fuck that, I'm getting low. And I didn't see him for 25 years. He's evaporated, but he never left the block. I don't know how he did it. You know what I'm saying? but I was like, I'm out. I'm off that tip too. Right. So I started looking for new ways. So when the thing happened with Paid in Full, I was like, if he could get touched, it don't make sense to do this shit. And to really see that, like just when I was talking about the jail, you hear about that shit. But like El Boogie, she was crying the whole time because she got a kid. I got a kid. To see a child, his heart broken and him crying, that shit is traumatizing. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's traumatizing. So to see all that shit, I wanted to do something different. To Pay in Full, like, man, this shit is crazy. It's disgusting. Mm. When you see little kids get killed and kidnapped and fingers getting cut off, nobody want to see that shit. That's not normal.
Nah, this was something you saw like
firsthand.
So
that shit right there, I'm like, yo, because I went to private school. Right. You know, I was a privileged dude. You know what I mean? I never was struggling in my life. My family always made sure I was all right. And then the thing is, I can't even talk about my family because then you really understand. You know? Mm. But I just was like, yo, this shit it don't feel good. And I'm intelligent. And my mom's died, and I'm like, yo, my mom's ain't do all of this shit for me to go to jail. And it ain't no girls in jail. I'm girl crazy. You know what I'm saying? That was really, it was like, so I put myself in boarding school. You know what I mean? I'm out. I went to boarding school. And the thing about it is like, when you go to private school your whole life, you never really know if you're better than everyone because they're white. Like I always thought I was better than everybody because I'm black and everyone else is just weaker than me because they white. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really know if I could survive uptown. I just used to hear about it, you know? I lived in 1199 and that was kind of like, at that time, it was like a little oasis within itself. Everyone in there was spoiled. Right. So me being able to survive uptown, I had to prove that to myself. My instincts and the freedom and just the swag and the style, it burnt me out. you know, that we were making our own rules and we lived by a code. You know what I mean? It was like the code was so real back then, and I was impressed by that. You know, like I always say, like shit that really fucked me up with Daniel, that really was like the most positive thing that ever happened, is being in the car and seeing Daniel walking across the street, mad tough, with the bucket, but he had his kids with him and they all had four-wheelers and shit. And I was like, that shit looks fly. That's the flyest shit I saw in the hood, is a nigga walking around tough while his kids got toys.
Yeah.
You know, you providing and proud. And that's what I wanted. You know what I'm saying? And then like with Lou, and again, this is my observation of Lou. Lou just never thought anybody was tougher than him. But he was still funny. Just never thought so I never thought nobody was tougher than me because, you know, you know, me and him used to slap box with niggas like, you know, he'd pull up, niggas would cross the street and I'd be able to, literally, dudes would come to visit me and this nigga would rob them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be like, you remember that shit, man, when you were on Tutu? Tutu came to see me with another nigga chain on a dirt bike and I'm like, yo, get off the block, bro. He's like, nah, this is, what's his name, Chain? I'm good. You know what I'm saying? With the dirt bike, I see these niggas coming, him and, I don't even want to say it, and they caught him for his chain. I'm like, why you gotta do that, man?
Allegedly.
No, it wasn't allegedly. He already did the time. You know what I'm saying? He's home. The nigga did 30 years. You know what I mean? He's home. I saw it. I was just like,